PapaKennMedia.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but it was still pretty bad.
So they're aliens?
No, that's stupid. They're turtles.
Is there anything else we should know about them?
They're ninjas.
Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new PapaKenn Reviews. As you can tell, today I'm going to be reviewing the brand new Ninja Turtles movie. Yay! Before I get started into the good and the bad, I just want to say, I recognize that I am no longer the target audience for the Ninja Turtles. The Ninja Turtles movies that I watched when I was a kid and the cartoon series that I loved and enjoyed as a kid, those are essentially my Ninja Turtles. These, the ones in this movie, and I can only assume the ones for the more recent cartoons. I haven't watched any of them, I've caught some clips, but they are, I can only assume they're aimed toward the audiences of today. And while watching the movie, there were quite a few kids in there, and they seemed to enjoy it, and their families seemed to enjoy the movie. So, I recognize that it hits its target audience. But, and also before I get into the good and the bad, if you really want to see this movie, if you really want to see it, if you really want to see it in theaters, please watch it in a matinee. Do not pay full price for this film. It is not worth it at all. But if you do want to watch the movie and you don't care whether you see it in theater or not, because please don't, wait until it's on Netflix or you can rent it. I am 100% serious here. Wait until you can watch it on Netflix or rent it for like $2, because to that extent the movie might actually be kind of worth it. And because it's honestly, like I said before, it's not as bad as I expected it to be, but it's still pretty bad. So if I paid like $2 for a Redbox rental, it probably wouldn't bother me too much. Or if I caught it on Netflix, which is just part of the subscription, where I get to watch all these movies and TV shows, wouldn't bother me as much. But I paid matinee price $7, and it wasn't worth it. But I think I'm going to start rambling here in a minute, so let's get into the good. First of all, the humans in the movie were actually pretty interesting. Now, people are calling this a Michael Bay film. He produced it, he didn't direct it, but it has a lot of the tropes overall of your typical Michael Bay film. And one thing that sets it apart from movies like Transformers is the fact that, whereas in Transformers, all we want to see are the Transformers and not the humans because they're annoying and they really serve no purpose, at least in my mind and other people I know. But in this movie, strangely enough, I actually enjoyed it more before the Turtles came in. Like Megan Fox as April O'Neil and Will Arnett as Vern. I enjoyed them. I liked where the story was going. It seemed like a, pretty interesting storyline. April is just this basically like a Today Show newscaster, and she wants to get out of that. She wants to do real news, and so like that part was really interesting. It was intriguing. But then once the Turtles came in, it kind of took a nosedive for me in some ways. I'll get into more of that a little later, but yeah, it's just like the humans in this movie were actually interesting, which, again, for a Michael Bay film, if you want to call it that, was definitely different from my experiences. Number two, the design of the Turtles. Now, I know that before this movie came out, I and a lot of people online were really hating on the designs of the Turtles. But, the way I look at it now, especially after seeing the movie, it was actually pretty well done. It made the characters more distinct beyond the simple color of their headbands, well, and the weapons, I guess, and the voices. Even though it's like, that's the way it was classically done, it was easy to tell the characters apart, especially as a kid. But, I like the fact that they took this direction, and it was a risk. And a lot of people didn't like it, but after seeing the movie, I don't really care. There were so many weird and strange costumes that the Turtles had throughout the years, both in cartoon form and in toy form. I have one right here. It's like a Private Eye Donatello. They've looked stranger. They've looked weirder. Have you seen the villains from the cartoon? Have you seen those toys? They look ridiculous. But that's besides the point. Just overall, I really did like the way they made the Turtles look. It made them more distinct. And even though I would say Donatello's design was the worst of them, overall I felt it was well done. And actually Leonardo, other than the ugly... Okay, this is one thing I still don't like. Their faces look horrible, but the whole snout thing and the lips just looks wrong. But Leonardo at least looks more like the classic Turtle. So, that's... overall, I like the design choice. Number 3, the action scenes. Now, I know a lot of people really don't like movies that have a lot of CGI, and it kind of gives this aspect of there's nothing really there, but I'm able to suspend my disbelief enough to where, I can basically imagine that these CG characters are actually there, so, it works for me. But overall, the action scenes were done pretty well. In fact, there were several that really stood out to me. The first of which is actually, well, let's just put it this way. Anyone that might be worried about spoilers before this starts, there's going to be a lot of spoilers coming up. So, yeah, if you don't want any, stop the video now, because I'm going to get into spoiler territory. Alright, proceeding. When the Foot Clan break into the Turtles' lair, and Splinter starts fighting them, his fights are actually kind of cool. It was like I'll get into the design of Splinter later, but his fighting is actually pretty interesting. I think it's pretty well done. And then there's the fight with the Shredder, between Splinter and the Shredder. And that was a pretty well done scene. I really enjoyed that. It was actually pretty intense, in my opinion. Again, it was two CG characters going up against each other, but overall I liked it. The second one is when Raphael is actually going to save his brothers, and then there's the showdown between him and the Shredder. And really, it was more of a one-sided battle because the Shredder was just destroying him. But it was a very intense scene. It was very, very powerful, I guess, as far as this movie goes. And like the Shredder gets him on the ground, and is like stepping on his shell, and you can hear the cracking. And that really went kind of a step beyond what any of the previous Turtles movies had. It's just, this really intense moment, and it's just like, oh my god, is he gonna, cripple Raphael? What's gonna happen here? So yeah, that was pretty cool. And, well, okay, you've seen this in the previews, but the whole scene where they're going down the snowy mountain, that was actually a pretty cool scene. I thought it was pretty darn well done. It was easily the most fun action scene of them all, and it was really fast-paced, and yeah, it was really enjoyable. And then the final battle between the Turtles and Shredder. Now, I love the original movie, but one thing they did wrong, in my opinion, was the fact that the Turtles pretty much just got whooped up, or they just completely got whipped by the Shredder the entire time. They didn't stand a chance at all, and they basically all took one strike at him, failed, and then all of a sudden Splinter turns up and saves the day. In this movie, there's actually, again, even though it's all CGI, there's some actual fighting, and it seems like it's going back and forth. The Shredder is overpowering them overall, but there is actually a fight going on. So that was something that I honestly, that was one thing that this movie had over the original. One thing. And the final good thing about this movie, in my opinion, is that there was one scene, it was actually leading up to that final battle, and all four turtles are in an elevator going up the stairs, and it's this really strange, like, they're just kind of standing there, like, battle ready. And you hear the dings of the elevator as they're going up, and then all of a sudden, I can't remember who starts it, but one of them starts, like, hitting their weapon together, and they start this little music scene, like, just with all percussion, with, like, you know, the dings of the elevator, and then, you know, tapping their weapons against the wall, or tapping the weapons together. It was a fun scene. That was the most, honestly, that was, in my opinion, the most Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles moment of this entire movie. I'll get into that more later. But that may actually be the best moment of the movie, in my opinion, because it felt like classic Ninja Turtles. It felt like that fun humor, and unlike the usual Platinum Dunes movies that are just something has to be going on all the time, it was a still shot and they built up to something. It was just so well done. Sadly, that's the only one like that in this entire movie, and it's very rare to actually see that in a lot of movies these days. Now, moving on, the bad. Okay, where do I get started here? Alright, now even though I said that CGI didn't bother me as much, the Shredder looked horrible. Absolutely horrible. And actually, moving back, the first time you see the person that is the Shredder, again, spoilers here. The first time you see him, he's actually pretty intimidating. He looks really cool. It's like, you know, they hide him sort of in the shadows. You can see part of him, but you can see that there's these scars. And this huge hulking figure. And it seems like it could be a really interesting, cool character. But then we get the Shredder in the big armor from the trailers. You all know what I'm talking about. He's basically a transformer. He's a samurai transformer. And his arms, I mean, I think it's supposed to look cool, I assume, but it looks like he has two gigantic Swiss Army knives on his arms. That's the best way I can put it. And it's just, whereas the person Shredder seems like he could be, you know, really interesting, really foreboding. When you see him in the armor, or you just see the CG armor, it's no longer a foreboding character. Maybe except for the scene where he's fighting Raph one-on-one. Maybe except for that. But otherwise, it's just a generic bad guy in a robot suit. There's a Silver Samurai from the Wolverine movie, or the more recent Wolverine movie. That was easily the worst part of that movie. But yeah, the Shredder was just overall a real disappointment when they had something good to build off of, but they didn't capitalize on it. Second, Splinter's design. Oh my god, that was the ugliest, this is the ugliest version of Splinter I've ever seen, and that's saying a lot because it's a rat. Just so ugly, and all of their budget had to have been spent on the computer graphics before they got to Splinter, because that was like season 1 Doctor Who computer graphics for him. And then, this part's hilarious. Even though I like the way that, you know, the Splinter did his fighting, that was really interesting. They made his tail like this super powerful thing. Like, when you first see him, he basically uses his tail, it's like an octopus. It just kind of like picks the turtles up and, you know, does... And when it's fighting, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's so very stupid because, I mean, there were certain times when the tail, they utilized it in a way that at least seemed kind of interesting. But overall, it's just like, you know, Splinter's just standing there and he's like using his force tail to do the fighting. And actually, that leads me into number 3. The way that Splinter and the Turtles learn the martial arts. Whereas the original movie and the cartoon, it's like they had their own way of explaining like how Splinter knew martial arts. And, you know, he of course trained the Turtles as they grew. In this one, he finds a ninjutsu book in the sewers, learns that, so learns the ninjutsu from the book, and then teaches the turtles. What? I mean, it was an interesting direction, but there are so many... it wasn't even kind of creative. Not at all. It's like, oh, Splinter finds this book, and somehow, from one book, he becomes a master of ninjutsu and teaches these boys. It actually hurts my head right now thinking about it. But yeah, that's... No. Fourth, Whoopi Goldberg. I love Whoopi Goldberg. But the character her character, she was Bernadette. From the character Bernadette from the cartoon was like, oh, Lois Lane, April O'Neil's best friend. They're at Channel 6 News. And, you know, they did all kinds of stuff together. And this one, she's her boss, which is fine. But at the same time, it's like she's there until April gets fired. Again, spoilers. Until April gets fired, and she's not seen again throughout the rest of the movie. At all. And I'll actually come back to that in a little bit because there's a lot of bad to talk about. Number 5? Yeah, I guess 5. I'm probably going to stop numbering them after this. The Turtles' personalities, while I like the designs, the personalities are just lame. They hit the base level of personality. Leonardo is boring. He's basically the Cyclops of the group, which, I mean, he was never really the most interesting character of the Turtles, but he's just the boring guy. Like, supposedly the leader, not even trying to lead at all. Raphael is, in the cartoons, both Michelangelo and Raphael were kind of like, you know, they were kind of similar, both kind of silly. Raphael was a little bit more of like, you know, the crude one, and Michelangelo was the more woohoo kind of guy. Since then, they've definitely pushed this to the extremes, where Raph is just kind of the rough guy, the rebel, and that's fine. But then there's a certain point, fairly close to the beginning of the movie, when we first actually get to see the Turtles, where he's all of a sudden talking about how he's going to leave soon and how he's going to, you know, separate from the group. Almost basically completely unprovoked. It makes no sense. They seem to be having a good time other than the fact that they just had to deal with April. So where did this sudden, you know, I'm going to be leaving here soon because I want to be on my own. Why? I'm actually going to touch on that again later. Oh god, this is going to be a long review. Donatello. Well, I will say this. Donatello, he had the worst design. The personality kind of worked. It was close enough to how I remember Donatello being in the original series, and I've actually seen in some of the clips of the more recent shows that I thought it was a pretty well done character. Again, personality-wise, still a bit like, you know, it was very obvious he was a stereotyped geek. As my voice cracks, he was very much a stereotyped geek, but you know, overall it wasn't too bad. And then there was Michelangelo. Now, Michelangelo, I don't know if he's supposed to be a surfer guy, a skater guy. I guess they both kind of meld into one. But he is definitely the most annoying iteration of Michelangelo I have ever seen. And Michelangelo was my favorite as a kid. My favorite in the cartoons, my favorite in the original movie. It's just like, well, that carried over from the cartoon, of course. But I loved that character. And in this one, he's just bastardized and so annoying and really kind of creepy. The first time he sees April, we haven't even seen him on screen yet except for like his silhouette. But the first time he sees April, he makes a boner joke about how his shell's getting tighter. And then he's just like creeping over April the entire rest of the movie. And I guess that could be written off to, you know, teenage infatuation. But it's just damn creepy. So creepy. That's one of my biggest disappointments of this movie, because of how much I love that character as a child, is just how they did him in this movie. And I don't even know who the person is that voiced him, but well, the writers mostly, but you ruined one of my favorite characters. I hate you. And really just the rest of everything, the rest of the issues that I have with this movie, I'm going to just sum up into one thing: the logic. Now I know what you're saying. It's a Michael Bay film / a Platinum Dunes film that he produced. You don't expect a whole lot of logic, do you? Well, yes and no. Because in movies, despite how weird they may be, there has to be some form of logic, and it needs to be consistent, unless something within the story specifically says why that logic cannot stay consistent. One of those things being, as I mentioned before, during the fight with the one-on-one fight with Shredder, Raphael gets basically stomped on by the Shredder, and you hear his shell cracking. And it's mentioned a little bit later that his shell's cracked and he needs Donatello to fix it up. After that, they're being shot at. They're being shot at, and they discover that their shells are bulletproof. Not just the back, but the front. We see Raphael pull a T-1000 or T-2000? I can't remember, but from the Terminator movies, he has bullets in his chest, and he like puffs out his chest, and the bullets fall out. Now, that's stupid enough as it is, but are you telling me that a person, apparently a very strong person, in a suit, can step on a turtle and crack its shell, but bullets can't hurt them? Bullets from rifles cannot hurt their shells, back or front. Moving on. In the main final battle between the Turtles and Shredder, Shredder starts doing his whole flying knives thing again, which he did in the sewers, and they're apparently very strong knives, and they like break into the concrete when they're in the sewers. And the Shredder ends up like shooting his blades out, and they start destroying this tower, like the tower where this chemical is being held, to topple it over. And the blades are going right through, slicing up the foundation, just making it really weak. Which is fine. However, the Turtles are deflecting said knives with their weapons. Now I can kind of see that with Leonardo's swords and Raphael's size, because I can only assume they're tempered metal, therefore very, very strong. I would assume so would a tower structure, but I can at least kind of forgive that. But Donatello's is not made of metal. It is wood / computer technology, unless he did something really crazy. I can only assume it's not tempered metal, like the katanas in the size. And Michelangelo has nunchucks. They're wood. Maybe a very heavy plastic at best. So the weapons are deflecting these knives, but the knives go through the structures like butter. And not only that, but before the Shredder even starting to destroy the tower, the Turtles are holding on to the side of the building because he knocks them off, and the building starts to give way. So, if they're heavy enough to be causing rivets to come out just by them hanging on, How is this ceiling that they're standing on not crumbling every time they jump? And at the very end, the tower starts falling down, the shredder falls and isn't dead, but it starts going down. And this entire time, while the battle's been going on, both while the turtles were holding onto the side and stuff started coming loose before the shredder started destroying the tower, there was debris falling, and it hits people. You can kind of see it hit people. Now that was interesting, and that was really impactful. It's like I didn't expect to see that. But minimum 5 minutes later, probably close to 10 minutes later, more debris falls, it hits the ground, people are gathered around even though there are officers and emergency workers nearby, and it hits more people. In what universe, when there's debris falling, do they not get citizens as far out of the way as possible? Huh? Serious question. And then, again, we have the turtles hanging onto the sides, and then they're in this tower as it's starting to go straight down, moving away from, well, actually, I'll get back to that. It starts going down, and then all of a sudden, it's like everyone starts, you know, saying things they've regretted. And Raphael has this whole drawn-out speech about how he was only mean and he wanted to leave the guys because he didn't feel worthy of them. It's just a stupid, stupid moral that came out of nowhere, really. It didn't serve a point. We kind of got that when they were bonding in the elevator. We get it that they put their differences aside to fight this great evil. That is not necessary. At all. At all. Now, to continue with the logic issues, at the end we find out that April has not given the story, has not given any of the information to the papers, to Channel 6, to show that these turtle vigilantes exist. Basically to keep their secret. Okay. Although that could have been used to get her job back, get her a more important role at the news organization. Again, aside, you know, and that's one thing that bothered me why Whoopi Goldberg's character Bernadette didn't reappear, because that would have, you know, been something good, been something positive for April O'Neil's character, or for that character April O'Neil. But this entire time, even though she had been documenting stuff, even though she'd been taking pictures, even if she kept all that secret, you're going to tell me that when there's a battle going on the top of a tower, when there's debris falling, when there is this structure falling down 2 buildings, not a single person had their cell phone out. There was not a single camera recording what was going on. There was not a single person that was able to catch these gigantic green things hanging off of a building or holding onto the structure as it's falling down. No one. No one in today's world recorded that and pointed out that there were these gigantic green things that may be monsters, they may be good guys, they beat the big bad guy that was made of metal. No one! And just to add on to that, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about as far as the logic of this movie, because I could go on for a long time. This video is very long already. But with all of that keeping their secret, even if I can believe for 1 second that no one caught a picture, no one caught video of the turtles, the last time we see them, they are in the turtle van, which I will admit was kind of cool looking. The turtle van has solar panels, has very loud bass, and does not look like any van that a normal person would see. If it has solar panels, unless they keep it hidden somewhere in the daylight, they have to be outside during the day. And anyone that is out during the day is not going... The logic of keeping themselves secret is basically being blown away by the fact they've created a vehicle specific to them that it kind of looks like a turtle shell, would need to be out in some form during the day, therefore can be found. And I just don't know. It hurts my head to even try and think of what kind of logic they might have had behind the decisions they made here. It really does. But overall, despite the issues that I've had with this movie, as I said before, I know this is not a movie that is intended for my audience. It is not intended truly for the classic Ninja Turtles fans. Even though the way the movie's set up, you need to have a kind of an idea of who they are to even really enjoy it. Anyone that has never seen or heard of the Ninja Turtles won't enjoy this movie in any form, unless they just like really weird action movies. Maybe. But recognizing that this is not intended for me, as I said at the beginning of this review, the younger kids in the theater and their families laughed quite a bit and really seemed to enjoy the movie. So in that regard, they are hitting their target dynamic. Anyone my age, I'm around 30, anyone around my age that enjoyed the Turtles, if you're not able to turn your mind off, like if you turn your mind off completely, you would probably enjoy this film. If you have the lowest of lowest expectations, you might have a chance of enjoying it somewhat. But it is not intended for the classic Ninja Turtles fans, even though they throw in side jokes and mentions of little nostalgic hints, which I can only assume was meant for the parents of the kids that enjoy the show today. Just a guess. Don't know for sure, but that's my assumption. Taking all that into account, that it hit its target demographic, I am no longer its target demographic. And the action was fun. It was entertaining, to say the least. It was entertaining. But with all the faults it has, I cannot give this movie more than a 2 out of 5. I considered going lower, but knowing that it has hit its target demographic, that its target demographic seemingly enjoyed this film, I cannot deny that there is some enjoyability from that perspective. Not from me, but from that perspective. So I give the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of 2014 a 2 out of 5. I will not be seeing this movie again. And as I said before, if you have not seen the movie already, but you really want to see it in theaters, do not pay full price. Do not. And if you want to see it in any form, please, I'm begging you, wait until you can either rent it on DVD or watch it on Netflix or some other form of streaming, because it is not worth the price of full admission at all. It is not, in my opinion, it's not worth the price of a matinee, but at least I didn't give as much money to this movie as I could have. Alright. For those of you that did enjoy this movie, and I know there's some out there, please let me know why. Tell me why you enjoyed this movie. It might be some of the things that I really enjoyed about the film, and you enjoyed them more and were able to overlook the movie's issues. And there were honestly so many more than the ones I mentioned. But if I told you all of them, this review would be as long as the movie, if not longer. So, I'm just going to leave it at that. One more time, everyone. This movie is a 2 out of 5. I do not recommend it. If you're a parent of a child that really wants to see the movie, you will not hate your life for seeing it. But if you have the choice, go see Guardians of the Galaxy instead. If you've already seen it, go see it again. Do not spend your well-earned money on this movie if you have the choice, and you do. You do. I could give so many arguments to give this movie a 1, possibly even a 0, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick to my rating, 2 out of 5. Everyone, have a great week. I'm Papa Ken, and I'll see you next review. Unless I have a stroke.